Hello, my name is Dr. Millicent Papillon. I am Bitterwater Clan, born for the Blackfeet Nation. My mother is Susan Perry. She is from Whippoorwill, which is a community near Pinon, Arizona. Um, Her father is Lee Perry. He is in Lukachukai, and Shamasani is Vina Denapaw, and she lives in Navajo Mountain. My dad is David Pepion. He lives here in Mesa, Arizona, which is where I was raised. Um, my dad's mom is Mavis Mitchell and Mavis Bulshu Salwe Pepion Mitchell. And she is from Heart Butte area. And my dad's dad is from Browning. But our family is also from Dupuyer, Robert, and Birch Creek. Um, so I am also a PhD in American Indian Studies at the University of Arizona. So I got my degree in 2023. And today I am going to be presenting on the Indian Removal Medicine Wheel study, which is a study I conducted using the Indian Removal Medicine Wheel. Um, And we're going to use this and AI to analyze President Trump's executive orders issued on his first day in office. That being said, just to kind of preface this conversation, um, man, the election of 2020 hit me, 2024 hit me hard. I had been working as a tribal liaison for the Arizona Secretary of State's office, and I left abruptly in August. And I tried to, well, I did end up taking on an assignment through Arizona Native Vote as their college program coordinator. I was traveling back and forth from the Navajo reservation um, for 2 months leading up to the election and a month after. And it was a heartbreaker, especially when I saw what happened in Apache County, but especially when I saw that Arizona voted, in favor of President Trump. And I knew that it was time with Coyote again, and that we were all going to have to brace ourselves. And so um, I referred back to this quote because even though I don't, work in civic engagement anymore as a PhD in American Indian Studies, and my dissertation did focus on voting specifically in Arizona. Uh, I always refer back to this quote. It's from Many Horses. I will follow the white man's trail. I will make him my friend, but I will not bend my back to his burdens. I will be cunning as a coyote. I will ask him to help me understand his ways. Then I will prepare the way for my children and their children. The Great Spirit has shown me a day will come when they will outrun the white man in his own shoes. And so this is a quote that I used to help, keep me going when I was writing my dissertation. But it's also a quote that I still use to this day, just as a general motivation quote. And it was the inspiration for this this study specifically, because I wanted to know what's going on here. And I'm very interested and curious in why all of these executive orders are being written. Um, as of the Waukesha conference last week, on November 7th, President Trump have executive orders. He issued 26 on his first day, which this study looked at. But, these executive orders are written in such a way that most people don't know how to read them, especially if you're native and you've grown up on the reservation where education in this kind of area is already very poor. Um, but it's just not something, even if you do speak English and you do have a PhD, it's written in legalese. For those of you who don't know what legalese is it's a type of English that is used by lawyers. and it's very hard to read. It's very boring. You fall asleep when you start reading it. Um, and that's what happened to me during my dissertation. I decided to look at the 40 different pieces of voting legislation which were passed by the 55th state legislature for the Arizona state legislature. And it was very extremely boring, going line by line and kind of using this model, the Indian mo removal medicine wheel model, to isolate and understand um, what type of attacks we were seeing as Native peoples. And so, just to kind of make you understand what an Indian removal medicine wheel is it's a model that I created um, in my since 2009, since I was in school from 2009 to 2003, beginning at Haskell Indian Nations University. Uh, I found that Indian removal is best explained in four different areas. Um, Genocidal warfare, assimilation, build a wall, and suicide. These are the four tactics that I notice have been implemented since 1492 to indigenous communities in the Americas. And when you put this model of genocidal warfare, assimilation, build a wall, and suicide, when you put this over things such as voting legislation, then it becomes voting removal legislation. And you can focus on things such as kill the vote, assimilate the vote, create voting barriers, and create an environment in which people don't want to vote. Which is something that I saw a lot of at the Secretary of State's office and also in my follow-up work at Arizona Native Vote. It was one of the biggest factors that we had to overcome was to try to convince people who were eligible to vote, to register to vote, and to actually follow through with voting. Um, and I noticed I saw a lot of voter suicide in our communities. And I also saw and heard about this guy named Al Begay who lives in, he just moved to the Navajo Nation. And, we're working with students there and they would say that they were referencing Al Begay. They're talking to Al Begay and Al Begay is AI. It's what some of the Navajo students call AI up there on the res. And so I know that there's a lot of things against AI and definitely going to talk about those, but there are some pros that happen and exist with AI. One of them is it improves your professionalism. Uh, if you have issues with grammar, punctuation, even if I probably AI'd this presentation, it might have ran a little bit smoother and I could have gone off an AI script. Um, it improves your professionalism, and especially if you're writing emails. A lot of professors right now are not even writing; they're just, going to AI and producing AI generated articles based off of their ideas. So it's a very big time saver. And like I said, if you've always had a problem with grammar, punctuation, AI is definitely can help you with that. It's a huge time saver. To write an email to, Lloyd about, ChatGPT email from me to Lloyd thanking him for inviting me to accepting my proposal to the Wakaja Show 40th anniversary conference to share this work. It can generate that in like a minute. I mean, and it be personalized by you. Um, it's also really great at summarizing articles, which is something that happens in our field a lot. We have to read a lot of journal articles as a PhD in American Indian Studies. And if you need time or if you don't have the time to go through and read a 20, 30-page report, you can just, you know, put it in a chat GPT, ask it to summarize the main points, and bang, there it is. It's also someone to confide in. They recently banned the use of creating law templates, and they don't no longer like recommend dosages for vitamins, but it's really, really good at being somebody to bounce ideas off of. And I said somebody, but being something to bounce ideas off of. You don't always have like a friend to talk to, especially, 4 o'clock in the morning, and you're trying to figure out how you want to present information to share at the Wakajo Saw review. No, I'm just joking. But no, it's a really good way to organize your thoughts. And then just throw crazy thoughts out there and, what do you think about this? And have someone actually communicate with you in real time, even though it's not really a person, it's a robot. Um, of course, there are the cons. The cons are data centers. They're currently trying to build one in the Grand Canyon area. These data centers take a lot of energy. They increase the costs of um, utility bills in any community that they exist in. Um, there's radiation. There's all kinds of things that are attached to these data centers that are just, horrible. AI is taking a lot of jobs. It started with self-checkout, phones. People would, you call Amazon and it's like, press one if you want to go here. And it takes forever to get to an actual human being these days if you are calling a corporation. Um, but it's also impacting jobs that, aren't self-checkout and phone jobs. It's, a lot of people were referencing it to talk about their law cases and to ask, what are the repercussions of this? And even more in the medical industry, X-ray techs, that was a profession where you had to go to school and study for 3 years, and then someone would take an X-ray, and you'd get 3 to 5 business days. You would have someone review it. Nowadays, you can get a digital image, and AI can tell you exactly what's wrong or what they see wrong in that image, and it's very accurate. And a lot of X-ray technicians, they may be out of work soon, especially if hospitals are going to have to cut back on funding. So it is impacting medical. It is impacting academic. It's been impacting regular consumer industries. Um, but the biggest thing that's kind of the real big drawback of AI is that it's not really reliable. I just read a report about how AI cannot distinguish between truth and fiction. Um, Essentially, how AI works is it's it takes what you input. It takes these prompts and it basically uses these language learning models, which is these big, huge data spaces that have a whole bunch of sentences and paragraphs and books that people have written. And so it guesses what type of response you are trying to hear based on what it has read in the past. But it's not really like connecting like a human does, like deciphering between fact and fiction and trying to generate feeling and emotion. Instead, it's just saying these words are good together. And for your specific question that you're trying to ask, these are words strung together in an order that have worked before in the past. And this is probably what's going to work now. Um, so it's not really um, thinking about what it's writing. It's more thinking about kind of how it sounds or how it looks. If that makes any sense. It's like a talking parrot. It can write a really nice love letter, but there is no love behind it. Is the basic way that I can let you know. It just knows how to say things really well in such a way that have been like people have liked what they've heard when they heard that response said back to them. So I'm not an AI person. I'm sure that someone's gonna like contest that, but I'm just letting you know from what I've heard and what I understand, AI is really a talking parrot. It's not really anything that can is gonna give you a definitive answer like someone with a PhD in American Indian Studies will. Which is why it's good if you have someone who's like a PhD in American Indian Studies to help it. I mean, but anyhow, moving on. Most importantly, it's important to know that AI is not indigenous. I do not think that it is indigenous. I would never support it in our efforts. That is human work. We are human beings. Um, One big, huge example is our language. When I was at the Secretary of State's office, we had two Hopi translators. One of them was from one village, and the other one was from the other side of the reservation in another village. And they produced two different texts when we had asked them to translate this information into Hopi. And yeah, it was really hard for us to, for even anybody else to say that they were wrong because they were both right. And it depends on dialect and where you are and who's speaking and who they're speaking to. And so there's a whole bunch of living factors that go into indigenous language that are not AI at all. Um, Storytelling is very complex. You cannot summarize indigenous stories. There's details in those stories that relate to other lessons. There's layering lessons upon each other, and you can't summarize that. Um, Not only that, again, stories are told by a specific person at a specific time to a specific person at a specific time in their life. And even though we might stamp those in a book, they're really living and they change. And I know that that's hard for some people to accept that our stories change based on who's talking and who they're talking to. Um, but most importantly, AI is not part of our original instructions. As Indigenous people, we were given responsibilities to live with and for all our relations in our communities. And to my understanding, robots are not our relations. Um, and I know that now they are here in our environment, and we may have to tweak those original instructions, include them. But to my understanding, I don't think that our elders, my dad especially, my elders would approve of this. My grandma didn't even like cell phones, so just throwing that out there. I know, like my grandpa had never had a TV. My mom's dad, Lee Perry, he never had a TV. He lived in a hogan with a rug door that faced the east. So I don't feel and that they are part of our original instructions, and so they are not indigenous. Artificial intelligence is not indigenous, and I do not support that. But artificial intelligence is Western. It is okay to do in the Western world, and it's actually very important. I always tell my students that the people who tell you not to use AI are using AI on you. Um, there's a lot of people right now that are using AI in at the Wakajo Saw conference. There are a lot of people at most universities. There's even like little warnings that they say on grants now because people are using AI to write grants. So, the use of AI is prevalent, not only in the government sector, but also in private industries. It is being used in Facebook, Google, all that stuff. And it's part of their history. Believing that humans are, machines and the world is a machine. That's a Western, that's something that Western people, pass down to their children. The same way that we pass our stories and languages and cultures, they pass down these ideas that humans are biological calculators. This is Thomas Hobbes, another Western grandfather. He said the human body is a machine that winds its own springs, and that there's no difference between humans and animals. Both are machines made of flesh. And then my last example here is Alan Turing, who um, said that, in cognitive science, that we should treat the mind as software running on the brain's hardware. And this was an idea that was co-signed by Daniel Dennett, who is um, one of the leaders in the AI industry. He's still living. But it's also, something that, someone like Elon Musk believes in. He's trying to put computers in brains currently. So, yeah, so it's part of their teachings. It's part of Western teachings, and it's part of you know, their world. And if we're living in their world, and we're living in two worlds, and we got to go step over on this side, it's okay. It's okay to use AI. And that's what I did. I used AI for this study. Now, you can go and you can summarize Trump's executive order, and you would get a summary, and it might have like 5 to 7 bullet points. And if you have an account with AI and you pay $21 a month to use the special services, then your specific AI that you pay for on your computer has a general idea about what kind of information you like to hear, what kind of words you like to use. And so it will pick those out for you when you're asking for a summary of executive orders. Um, and so these boys at I say at Harvard, they noticed that this happened, and um, and so they tried to develop a way in order to address that. And so they created this chain of density prompts. Now you use this chain of density prompts when the paper or the text is very complex, when the paper is, filled with rich information, and when it's long. When the for their study, they looked at a 60-page book. Um, but basically, what the chain of density does is it creates summaries that start off sparse and become increasingly entity-based, entity-dense. And so it will produce 5 summaries. And they found in their study that using the chain of density prompt, that if you take the third summary, that is actually a not only a reliable summary, but it's one that can be tested on other AI bots. Like other people can put in this, AI prompt, put in that book, and you guys will receive similar answers. You're not going to always receive the same answers, but it's going to be similar and it's going to be reliable. And that's what I did is I used this chain of density prompt, and I put in um let me go ahead and add here, and I went ahead and um here's the prompt, and then right here you highlight this part and then you put in the executive order. And then after that, I went through, and like I said, it produces 5 different prompts, and they look like they look like this when you bring it up. So it produces, it tells you what entities are missing, and then it gives you the denser summary. It gives you 5 dense summaries. And then you use the third one, as indicated by that study that those boys did at Harvard. And then you ask Chat GPT, a little thing will come up and it'll say, ask Chat GPT. And then I put in the second prompt. And the second prompt was a prompt that I invented that uses the Indian removal medicine wheel to try to understand what type of tactic that executive order is utilizing to attack our communities. So there's, of course, genocidal warfare, there's build a wall, assimilation, and I put in words and ideas that AI can use to expand on, and then suicide. I also put in a fifth thing, and this is the not listed. So this can be things that wouldn't really be considered listed in the Indian removal medicine will, but may still be used um, in um, in these executive orders to target Native communities. And so I asked it to create one. of the primary tactics that's being used, and then also list a secondary tactic if there was one available. So, with that being done, I did this to all 26 executive orders, and those were the first 26 that were passed, that were signed on the first day of office. And this is what I came up with. Um, of the 26, 10 of them have elements of build a wall. Seven of them have elements of assimilating Native peoples into the larger U.S. Government. Four of, well, actually eight of them. Four of them are not listed. Four of them use genocidal warfare, and one of them has elements of suicide. What's interesting is that when you read the titles of these executive orders, and you didn't know how to speak legalese, you might think that these were good. Ending the weaponization of the federal government. That sounds like a good, executive order. Restoring freedom, ending racial and wasteful spending. And that's part of why we have to use AI because they're framing things um, in ways that sound good, but in my study, I found that they aren't good for Native communities. And so it, it's very important that we keep up with this. And if we can use a tool like AI to help us um, decipher legalese and put it in language that we understand, in English terms that we understand, that the community, the whole community can understand, then it's really a good thing. And so within these results, what I found was there are three things that I just want to cover. First of all, they're still building walls. I can't blow this up right here, but this is a picture of um, Plymouth Rock when they came here to what is now the United States. And it's basically like a fort. It has like four walls around it, and there's one point of entry, and then there's like posts at every other direction. And you have to show ID to get in, and everybody there is accounted for. And they're still doing that. They're still building those walls and creating that system where they're letting in certain people but keeping out other people. And there's a screening process there that's happening. And that was their primary defense when they came here, and it's still their primary defense that they're implementing now. Um, the second one that I always want to talk about is assimilation. And I didn't really get to go into this much when I was at the conference, but I will go to it now. Um, I was born in 1985, and when I was born, my dad went up to Lukachukai. There was either like a funeral or something happening where a large group of our family members were getting together. And it was the first time that my dad met my grandpa Lee Perry. And my grandpa Lee Perry, like I said, he's a very traditional Navajo man. He didn't speak much English. He went to boarding school, but he forgot it all. He went right back to learn to speaking Navajo, and he lived in a hogan that he built with a rug door facing the east. And um, when he spoke to my dad, my mom, she doesn't speak Navajo. She went to Pinyon boarding school and Tuba City boarding school, and she grew up on the Navajo reservation, but she never learned Navajo. And that's a problem that exists, and a lot of people don't talk about it, but there's a lot of Navajos that grow up on the Navajo reservation who do not speak Navajo, who don't even know a little bit. And my mom is that person. She knows a little bit because her dad spoke Navajo, but she didn't know like big concepts and she's not fluent at all. And so when my dad first met my grandpa, he had my mom there, but then there was another translator there, and that was my auntie. And between my mom and my auntie, my dad was able to communicate with my grandpa. It's really, he would say something and then it'd be translated, and then my grandpa would say something and then it would get translated back to my dad, and they had a conversation like that. And that was in 1985 when I was born. Now, um, growing up we used to always go to Lukachukai to go visit our family over there. And I remember all of my cousin sisters that were my age. Those are the 1980s kids, 1990s kids. They all got Kinaldas, all of them. It was like a really big deal. And if you got a Kinalda, you got to get a dress and you got to get moccasins and everybody prayed for you and wanted you to pray for them. And I didn't get one. And I remember that was like really hard for me because everybody I knew that was my age got one. And so it was something that, hurt my feelings growing up. And my sister got a Kindle doll, but I didn't get a Kindle doll. And so anyhow, fast forward to 2015, my uncle Stanley, he found out that his daughter, she was kidnapped. And so we got all excited and we went over to her house. And she lives down the street in a place called Saley. And across from her housing community, which is right near the gas station there, is a big church. And she goes to that church. And the church there in Saley told her not to do a Kinalda because it was witchcraft. And so when we came to the steps of her door in Saley and we tried to bring her gifts and tried to start the ceremony, the Kinalda ceremony for her, she said no, she didn't want it. And she turned it down because she's Christian and it's against her. And today when you go to Lukachukai, there's still people there that speak Navajo, but TV, satellite TV, the internet, the church, all of these elements have really created an environment in which the Navajo language and Navajo culture isn't as strong as it was. And, that was notated by my dad when he went back up there with me not too long ago. He's like, man, this place used to be a different world. He was like, it was literally like going back in time. And now it's just like being, part of any other American community. And that's sad to him, it's sad. He's, of course, a Blackfeet man and he's not Navajo, but he did remember Lukachukai the way it used to be. And that's assimilation. When you can convince people and you can create an environment where they do not want to speak their language, where they do not want to practice their culture, where they want to support candidates like President Trump, who are actively destroying their water and their land and communities, and voting for those in favor of those kind of people, that is very, very dangerous. And it is very effective too. And assimilation is a real threat to our communities, and it is something that has always threatened Native Americans' ways of life. And it's the second one. It's the second tactic that they're implementing. And it's because it's a very good tactic to implement against a group of people. Um, be like us, and then you won't have to worry about being attacked by us because you will be us. So anyhow, that's my Lukachukai assimilation story. And just kind of moving here on the last point about the results was this this notion of not listed. That was a category that's not part of the medicine wheel that I created, but I told the robot, if it's still attacking us, but it's just not listed, can you please write not listed and let me know what your thing what you feel? And it found four different ways that Native peoples are being attacked. Interestingly, it did not say not listed, you are not being attacked. You are not being Indian or not being removed from these conversations. No, it said, no, it's not actually any of these four areas. It's this one. And it just tells you, like robots are thinking too, and they're learning. And, maybe before they used to just string together words that sounded good. And that's for the most part, that's what they still do. But there's also an element of them having reason and, formulating their own thoughts and opinions about topics that researchers are putting and offering, such as myself. So, just throwing out that, and then just be aware that, there's still four tactics where they're like targeting our communities. And AI was like, that's genocidal warfare, which is crazy. That's something like I very, I very much knew to be very, clear on when to use genocidal warfare because I understand that it is a tactic that offends most people who feel like they're using it. But uh, it's it's it was verified by AI that that's what it was doing. So with that being said, I do want to point out that there are limitations to my study. Um, One, I'm a single mom. And so while I'm doing this, I'm, having to plan to go to Santa Fe, having to, work my regular 9 to 5 jobs. And at any given moment, I have to stop and make chicken nuggets. So I might be having like some big grand idea and then, "Choo-choo, Mom, can you like make me chicken nuggets?" And I have to like get up, go to the kitchen, make them food, and okay, you done? All right, let me go back to my work. So anyhow, there may be, and I've noticed, discrepancies and things that can be challenged because I have those interrupted thoughts, I guess you could say. Um, but another limitation that I had is, something really should be considered is that AI, the results that I produced, you could do the same thing at your home computer. You can put in the chain of density prompt, put in the Trump executive order, use the third prompt, and then use the prompt that I used, or use and write on there which area of the Indian removal medicine wheel is this using to remove indigenous peoples, and you'll get different results. So it's different. It's everybody is going to have different results every time they put it in. And even if I did it again, which I did mess up, and I had to like redo it, and it came up with something else. So starting that out there. Um, and with that being said, the final limitation is that AI is constantly being scrutinized. Like I said, they recently had a big, huge overhaul um, on the week of the conference, which was November 7th, 2025, and they stopped allowing AI to give dosages of medications and to write law templates. But just letting you know that there's other things that are always constantly being scrutinized and tweaked while they're using AI. And I'm sure that the, Chat GPT version that we have now, which I think is like 4 or 5, is going to be replaced by 6 or 7, 6, 7. And, so yeah, so just letting you know that it's constantly being scrutinized. And so, but like I said, it's pretty good at producing summaries, especially if you use that chain of density. So with that being said, I showed the Indian removal medicine wheel to a couple of my clients who are in rehab. They are urban Native American peoples. One of them came from the San Carlos tribe, other one came from the Tohono tribe, and I was working with them. And I said, "Hey, what's the opposite of the Indian removal medicine wheel? What is that?" And so we came up with the Indigenous Permanence Medicine Wheel. And so the opposite of genocidal warfare is to welcome cultures. The opposite of assimilation is to embrace differences. And the opposite of build walls is to build bridges. And this is something that has been written about as well, but the single most act of resistance in a capitalist society is to love yourself, and to be happy with how you look and who you are and where you are and what you have, because capitalism is constantly wanting us to be in a state of deficiency in all of those areas. And so, that's something that goes beyond the study, but I just thought that I'd mention it here. And with that being said, I want to thank you if you made it this far, and apologies if I said anything that may have offended you. You can go ahead and email your question, comments, or concerns to my email, millicentpapillon@gmail.com. Also, my phone number is listed there, usually only text. But I would like to take a minute to thank Lloyd and all of the fine people at the Wakaja Saw Review. to another 40 years.